Hello and welcome to Soul Family Chat, where we envision new possibilities for a new earth. It's my great pleasure today to welcome Mar Michelle Hausler. Hello, Mar.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, it's great to have you here. So here's a little bit about Mar. Mar had an incredible, successful career as a financial trader in London, and to the surprise of her family and friends in college, she gave it all up to study economics for transition at Schumacher College in the UK. It's an innovative school for sustainable change. And as part of her thesis project, she created a social currency called the Inkiri, an alternative means of exchange in a community in Brazil. After graduating, she felt the need to bring about a new way for people to relate to money and to connect to their passion and life purpose, and created the Me, Myself and Money workshop and the Aligned Money Coaching Program. After the birth of her son, she focused her work on empowering women to align their purpose, money, and well-being, and she's reached thousands of people with her workshops and coaching. Welcome. How old is your son now?
Thanks for this beautiful introduction. Okay. He's 2.5 now, actually, and he just started forest school this week. So
yeah, I just love just the sound of that forest school. It sounds so beautiful. Can you tell me this is like an incredible journey. You were when I said you had a successful career in trading, it was more you were like phenomenal. I mean, you were like what do they call it, like star trader on your floor, and you had all that success, and then you had some kind of epiphany and you decided to give it all up, shock horror to your friends and family, and then you went on to study at Schumacher and do this project, and now you're a coach helping people understand money, etc. Can you tell me a little bit about that journey and what you went through?
Yeah, sure. Gosh, where to start? It's such a long one. I guess there's a whole thread that goes through all of this, which was that I was really driven by results, really driven by proving myself from when I was very young. So I was already in sports, excelling, and from a young age. And so it was only natural for me to become a trader at the time, because it was where you wanted to be to make a lot of money. And in my eyes, money was freedom. And I just wanted to make a lot of money. By the time I was 30, I had a goal in mind, and I wanted to be promoted every year. And so I was really on it, and finished my degree, did an internship at JP Morgan, and then ended up trading at UBS and really kind of going for it. What was crazy in my career was actually that, when you start out, you're kind of like the young person on the desk, and they're getting you to do all the little things. And so they gave me a trading book, and it was a crisis. It was during the 2007 to 11 AIG, Lehman Brothers, all the banks, Irish, Portuguese, everywhere. Spanish were really going down, the Landesbanks. And so they gave me this book, which is different bonds that I was trading to trade, and that no one wanted to trade. And I started making markets. And within a year, I outperformed basically everyone on the trading floor as one of the only women traders. And so I was really kind of on the top, hitting targets and really going for it. But I'm not who I am today then. I was super aggressive, really, in the masculine world, trying to prove myself. But then I started meditation, interestingly enough, after that year, because there were a few things that kind of didn't feel quite right. And the biggest question that came to me was that things were just not aligned with my values. And I could see that things were crumbling in me. I had this conversation, interestingly enough, yesterday with someone, and she was saying it's like when your body is moving, but your soul is not there. And I could see that. And I wrote a poem a month before I quit finance, actually, where I did say I was looking in the mirror and I couldn't see myself there anymore. And that was kind of like the explanation of that. But really, it was not aligned with my values. And so the second year, after I started meditating, I was trading. And the first year, I think I made like over 65 million for the bank. And then the second year, they said, what is your target? And it was going to be a really bad year. And I said, I'm going to make 10 million. They said, if you make 20 million, we'll pay you this. And I doubled, like I made over 45 million, and they didn't pay me what they said they would. And interestingly enough, since you're also into meditation and everything, I'm bringing this as a parenthesis, but twice the market crashed that year, and twice I had an insight through my meditation to sell the day before. So I did. So I was the only one who went short. So that's why I made so much money that year. but they didn't pay me what they said they would. And I was also having many signs from life that were just like, this is not for you, this is not your path. And it kept knocking on my door, you know, when one sign comes and the other. And I feel like life kind of whispers in your ears and then taps you on the shoulder and then gives you a little nudge and finally like kicks you basically until you get it. And so I could see these little signs arriving. And then I decided to leave after a couple of signs and different things. Quite a big experience actually that I don't speak about so much, but I was sitting in my bed one Saturday and it was like the sky opened and this light came in and I saw a noose and a plane, and it was clear to me that if I didn't leave, like that was my soul was crying basically to go.
Wow.
And so I left finance and I started this journey, and I remember they didn't want me to go, so they kept my deferred shares. I just had the small proportion of cash, and the head of the bank was calling me saying, you have to come back, we're going to take it away. And I said, you can take my money, but you can't take my life. And this was at 26. Maybe a bit arrogant at the time, I would say. But that's what started my whole journey, where then I started traveling. And before I went to Schumacher, it was about 4 years. I was living between India and Brazil and South America, and really just exploring, like living in ashrams, exploring communities, another way of living. And that's where the question came in, and this search for something else, a search for something beyond striving for money and outside possessions and power and status. Like, what else is there, basically? And that's how I ended up at Schumacher College. Also a very funny story. I was running the ashram for my spiritual teacher at the time. And I'd done a short course at Schumacher College. And I said, we still have some bursaries available if you'd like to study. And there was the Masters of Economics for Transition. I thought, oh, interesting. And I was like, I'm going to the ashram. And I got to the ashram. And it was the first day of Schumacher College, like a month later. And I was telling everyone a bit about Schumacher and thinking it would be super interesting. And it was the first day of the ashram, and I got really sick. And I was running, like, the whole welcome center had a lot of people working, like, doing seva under me. And I went to my spiritual teacher at the time and I said, look, I have this opportunity. And he just looked at me. He said, you have to leave. You have to go study. And so within 2 days, I packed up with my Havaianas, my Brazilian clothes, and moved to the UK and started Schumacher College just in, like, a few days into the introduction week. And that was really a life-changing moment for me, because I feel like until that point, I went from the material life to the spiritual life, from one extreme to the other. From really living in finance, you would say Wall Street of London, like really on the markets, to then living in the ashram, only wanting to meditate and thinking that was my life. And at the same time, my spiritual teacher kind of kicking me out. And Schumacher was like my integration back. So a lot of people that ended up there, they were like finding a new path. And for me, it was like landing back into the world. And because the program is so set up, like an ashram, we have morning meditation and practice. And then we have a moment where the community shares and you come together, and then everyone does a seva. Either you're cleaning or you're cooking or you're gardening or doing something else, and everyone's helping out. It was really a safe space for me to kind of land back. And that's what allowed me to integrate, which is what we're coming to now, my financial life as a trader with the spiritual experience to then create the Me, Myself, and Money workshops, the Aligned Money methodology coaching programs, and all the other work I've been developing since. And I would say that was a big pivotal point for me when I was doing my thesis, because I was like, I wanted to work with money. I wasn't sure. And I went to this community in Brazil where I live with them to create, as you said, this community currency, to empower the community, to really put into practice, I would say, what I was studying at Schumacher College. So to really like try it out with the community and create this currency. And the biggest learning for me was that it's possible, and it was amazing to empower the community from within and to see the results actually in practice that we had learned in textbooks, let's say. So I was able to document that. But the biggest learning I got from this, and I would say that it reflects into the world today as well, is that it's not about the means that we're using on the outside. So it's not about the coins, the paper, I would say even the electronic means, crypto, whatever it is, but it's about our relationship to money. Because we can change the means that we're using on the outside, but if we don't change the way we relate to money, we're just replicating the same things again. I feel like life is relational to all the things and not the thing itself. And so that's where the workshops were born, and the work I'm doing today, and really exploring that, your personal and emotional relationship to money. And now I've taken it even further in this exploration after you mentioned the birth of my son, after I'd been with you all in Fairfield and kind of done the workshops, but it was really bridging the two of, okay, we need to make money in a way. We're still in the material world, but how do we do this in a purpose-driven way with our passions, with what we're here to bring to the world? So we're not just working for money, but we're really putting our gifts out there and then sharing them with the world and receiving back for that. And for me, it's really the marriage of the two. It's really bringing those two together to then live a fulfilled life, because you're doing what you love to do and you're receiving for that. And so that you can perpetuate that cycle of giving and really sharing your gifts. I hope that wasn't too long.
No,
I got really excited in sharing.
I've heard you speak before about when you were trading, and part of what made the disconnect where you felt that your soul wasn't present was that you were aware that some of the trading was benefiting from the losses of people. It was creating hardship for people, like during the financial
crash.
crash.
This was a big realization I was having, because, we were making millions for the bank and more, and, partying on weekends and traveling the world and doing all sorts of things. And like Lehman Brothers crashed, and we were making money on the back of that, and people were losing their livelihoods. People were losing their whole lives worth of work. I mean, people were committing suicide. And the same with all the other banks, the crash at the time. People had mortgages 5, 6, 7 times more than the houses were worth that they were paying back. And it just seemed like in shambles, right? And then there was us like making a lot of money, completely disconnected from the lives that it was affecting. And when I went traveling, I started realizing the reality of this. I was meeting Irish people traveling, saying, oh my goodness, we lost our jobs, we have these crazy mortgages. Just meeting people who were living that reality. And I started thinking, like, how is this even possible? Like, how are we living in a world that's so disconnected? And it also made me question myself. It's a very strange thing, and I'm trying to put my finger on it, because everyone who works in the bank or everyone who works in institutions, of course, is a human being. They have families. You really care about them. But it's like when you enter that building, you just become something different. You're part of this system that's, and so it's not like, okay, this is bad or this is good, or it's just it's perpetuating for me. And so that really made me start questioning, well, what am I putting my energy to? Like, how am I using my life force, right, to do something that is not aligned with my values and to generate money for something that doesn't really sit right for me? And I think that was one of the signs. I was going home crying like almost every day, or speaking to my flatmate at the time, and she'll tell me that now. She was like, you were crying every day saying, what am I doing? And how is this happening? And I could feel it inside. And the more I've done this work now, we just realize in our bodies, like, if this is right, if this is not right. But our minds are telling us something, because we're so conditioned by society, right? Making money is good, or power is good, or whatever it is that we believe. And so it's been a massive deconstruction, and also really getting in touch with myself and others to be able to reconstruct in a new way.
Yeah, I mean, I found that in my life. Sometimes people suggest clients to me, and I'll just sometimes just feel on the vibe, but also know about the business they're in and what they're doing. I'll just go, it's not. And sometimes, occasionally, I go, oh wow, that's a really good opportunity financially, and just go, nah, can't do it. And I made that conscious decision quite a few years ago, and it's worked out really well. Since everybody I work with, I feel really aligned with.
Yeah, I think that's a big question for everyone, really, because I think we vote on a day-to-day basis with the money that we spend. And we vote, like, it's like, where do you go shopping, right? Where are you putting your money, but also how are you receiving it? It's the same way of what you're doing for it to receive it, and where you're spending it. And so if you're receiving it in a way that doesn't really feel aligned, of course it's not a healthy flow, right? Of course, and I'm not saying like, okay, it's inevitable that sometimes we need to do work that isn't fully aligned until we get to the alignment. I'm not saying quit everything and, just go find it. But I am saying, like you're saying, when you can choose clients or you can choose things, to be quite aware of that and feel into it and see, okay, am I going to align with this or not? And the more we align with the things we believe in, I feel like the more life, the universe, whatever you want to call it, aligns with us and sends us those clients too, and sends us those opportunities. So we are getting more into alignment, and then we're getting more into the flow of life. So I think it's really a balancing act. And like you're saying, really picking, where it feels right to us.
Sure. I picked up one thing that you said when you were sort of recounting your story there. You said that they'd promised you a certain bonus or percentage and they didn't give you. So there's that break of trust, and I've had that too in relationships and business. And then you just go, "Well, I'm done." Now, that's it, and that's a red flag, isn't it? When somebody breaks your trust. I mean, I guess you have the opportunity to talk to them about it and say, "Well, that's what we agreed on," and see if they'll come to, will respect, honor what they've originally agreed to. But if they don't, it's a red flag, isn't it?
Yeah, and for me, I think it was more than then they were saying, okay, we can pay you this and we can pay you more, but I just realized it wasn't about money then.
Yeah.
I didn't want to stay anymore, So at some point, I think there's red flags, but there's also like, how far can you be pushed, until you're like, this is not a compensation or this is not okay for me. And it's a general norm in finance to not underpay people, but to just kind of go under, to really push them, to strive. But I was also realizing at the time, a lot of people around me, I was very young, and a lot of people around me had been there for years. And they were just not leaving because you had so many accumulated deferred shares. I was being paid this amount of money, 1/3 next year, 1/3 the year after that, and 1/3 the year after that. So it's like the donkey and the carrot. You're basically never getting it, or you're staying in that seat. So people had these lives that they were living on the back of the deferred shares that they were going to receive in the next few years. So they were just not moving. And I just thought to myself, if I don't leave now, I'm never going to leave because I'm just going to be so wound into this. It's a bit like a golden cage, your handcuffs. And I just realized I'm just going to get wound into this and not go. And so it was either now or never, I would say, in those kind of words,
Sure, yeah. I mean, I know people that have stayed in that position for the payout, and then it didn't work out for one reason or another, and all that.
Yeah, like, people who spent their life in Lehman Brothers and then it crashed, and all of your savings or whatever, your deferred shares are gone. I have a person I've been coaching for quite a long time. He was really one of the top people in New York for a big bank. And he said that to me. He's like, I spent my whole life there. And now it's like I have all the money I want and I'm sitting in a golden cage with the door open and I don't know what to do. Wow. He's like, I just don't know. I can follow a blueprint. If you tell me to do this, I can execute, but I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want to live. And this is like at 53 years old, having lived your whole life and decided not to have a family. And it's like, do I want a family now? What do I want? Not what does society expect from me or what has driven you so hard? And for me, that's just like, it's hard to see. I'm like, why are we even pushing children into this? Why are we even, it's like, it's now, it's time to wake up. And beyond that, I feel like, and this is a kind of maybe esoteric or something, but the whole climate crisis, everything that we're living through, the crisis, our inner, it's a reflection of our inner. It really comes to our inner healing that we can look at that. And I'm just questioning, like, how misaligned are we in society to be causing all of this, to be part of a system that we're perpetuating in these ways? And so, I mean, that's probably a whole nother conversation. But
yeah, I don't think people generally really understand how far off we are from nature. And I was just thinking the other day, I live in Iowa and there's lots of rivers here and things like that. But the majority of the world now, you can't drink the water, right? So unless it's purified and this and that. People just accept that, and we drink water out of bottles, but it's not natural. I mean, we should be able to live in a world where you can drink from the stream. I mean, and then, it would take a lot to get to that now, but I believe that's how it's meant to be, and that's how far off we are that we have things in bottles. But anyway, like you said, that's another conversation. I'd love to get to your thesis project in Brazil with the Inkiri, and can you tell me a little bit how it worked, how the social currency and how it impacted people, and what your kind of learning was from that? Maybe give me an idea of how large the community was. And
sure. I think at the time there was 300 fixed people and around 500 like floating. Mm-hmm. So, and it's basically the biggest intentional community. At the time, it was the biggest intentional community in Brazil. And what happened was that I landed there when I wanted to do my thesis, and they were looking for this, changing the economic system. And so what we did is we studied the economic systems to really understand how we could implement the currency and what it had gone through. And interestingly enough, it felt like it was a microcosm of the macrocosm. It was going through the shifts that the world had gone through in different ways. So initially, everyone who moved into the community put all their money into a pot, and then everyone got distributed the same amount. Then, so it went basically through communist to capitalist systems to anything possible. And by the end, it was like each project had its own bank account. No one was speaking, no one was relating, when actually the money could flow between them to really help each other to grow. Someone was saving money, the other one could use it short term. And so we decided that it would be just so beneficial to come up with a new system. And what we did is we studied and spent time firstly with them, and then we created this new currency, I would say. And more than anything, what I just loved about it is that we inherently changed the values of it. Instead of having it horizontal, we turned it vertical. We had pictures drawn from children of the community to represent the money. We put the values of the community on the money. We put the pillars of the community on the money. So it was about children, nature, community. The values were about honesty, self-responsibility, beauty, abundance. So it was really beautiful to bring that in. And what we did was, instead of imposing it to build trust with the community, we started offering, it's almost like instead of being a debt-based system, that was the important thing, it became like an abundance-based system. We offered everyone in the community a bit of this currency to start with. And so everyone got, I would say, 100 reais or a bit more to start with. And then slowly, as the trust was built, more of their salary or their earnings were paid in the currency, and less of it was paid in reais, in Brazilian reais. And by the end of it, when I wasn't there anymore, everything was being paid in the Inkiri currency in the community. And so you were banking it. There was a whole banking system going on. And then when you wanted to exchange it, you could. And they had a reserve, a back as well. But what happened was that it was just circulating so many times more within the community. And the community started blossoming because people were creating products that you normally would buy from outside. So instead of having someone, for example, making bread, they used to go outside to a baker or a supermarket or wherever to buy bread. Someone in the community started making bread. So everyone was buying it, of course, with Inkiri. So what happened was that a lot more support was being given for community projects, for people within the community, and it allowed them to blossom in different ways. And one of the things that I loved when we did this was that we also gave each of the children Inkiri. So we gave them a whole session about explaining to them what it was. And so the first people who actually received it were the children of the community, who could then spend it in the community and start learning about money also in a new way. So really fundamentally, our idea was to bring in a system of abundance where we were spending into abundance and really nurturing the people in the community versus it being a debt-based system and really taking from the system. And it was such a great experience for me, because beyond just imposing something, I could really live with the community, to embed their values in it, to really have conversations about it. And it took a few months to really understand what were their needs, how could we work with this, how could we implement this in a healthy way where it was trusted. Because at the end of the day, money itself doesn't have value like the piece of paper, right? It's the trust that we put into it. It's the agreement that comes through it that really, gives it the strength. And so that was our inherent, first motive, to get the community to trust the currency, to get the community on board, to get everyone in, to really believe that this was possible. And I mean, beyond just thinking that I wanted to try it out in this community, this has happened so many times over and over again in history, where community currencies have been created. And beyond just community currencies, for example, hyperinflation, speaking about a time we're going through now, but in Argentina, when that was happening, in markets, people were trading with coupons to exchange goods and services. And I would say that, I'm not going to go as extreme, because I'm quite positive, and, I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but, the world is not in the best position that we are in right now, right? I mean, we have inflation at 8 to 10% in a lot of places. There are a lot of wars going on. We've just come through COVID. So we are going through quite a difficult phase. And so in these moments, it also gives a possibility to be more creative, because some people are really struggling. So can we allow creativity? Can we allow other means to flow to really allow us to pass through these times? And for me, that's a big question that I like to open up with people, because when everything's the same or stagnant, I feel like we just adhere to things. But when things start changing, our creativity really blossoms. It allows us to explore things differently. And this was just a little experiment, I would say, at a moment in time. But I really hope that maybe this can inspire others, or at least birth creativity in different ways, that we can really empower ourselves as communities locally to really go through these challenging times together.
I assume people loved it, they liked it, and did it generate more prosperity? What sort of experiences did the people have?
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, beyond just generating more prosperity and really allowing the community to flourish, what a secondary effect was that we did not take into account, actually, was that there were a lot of robberies in the community, because it was in Brazil, in an area where it was a rather, let's say, not an affluent area. And so there were always a lot of break-ins into the community, and sometimes people who were driving to the community, because it was a community with a retreat center as well, so there were outside guests coming in and things, they would sometimes stop the cars on the way to take from the people or to rob them. And what happened as a secondary effect, beyond all the effects that we had imagined, was that basically there were no more break-ins because people couldn't do anything with the money. So it was becoming like, in the outside world, it was becoming irrelevant. So guests who would come would make a transfer to the account and then be paid in Inkiris as they arrived. So you'd receive your Inkiris, but the people who are outside robbing or whatever didn't have any reason to come, right? Because they were just receiving Inkiri, even though, interestingly enough, the vegetable sellers who still sometimes came from outside of the community, there was a few different vendors, let's say, they were starting to accept Inkiri as well. And in the town nearby, Itakare, they had some shops that said, we accept Inkiri. Okay, so it went beyond just within the community. But I love the secondary effect when we were talking about it, going, things that you don't really count with or you don't expect, was this one. It really reduced robberies, really reduced the fear of anything like this, because Brazil in itself is, I wouldn't say dangerous, but has some of these, it's more prone to this than any other country, let's say, or other places. And especially in this area, it really kind of took that away.
I mean, one of the principles of local currencies is that the wealth starts to circulate more locally, so it benefits the local people. I explained to you the other day when we were having a chat that I live in a small town, and I can see in this town where the money goes out of the town. There's two big supermarkets. There's a Walmart, and there's a big supermarket, and then there's Amazon and the internet. And you can see where the money goes out of the town. And you can see when one of the big businesses in town starts to offer a service that used to be that had been offered by a local vendor, and they go out of business, and they take it over. So local currency helps with that, I assume. I'm just giving an example. For example, we don't have it here, but we have Walmart here. So we have Walmart everywhere in Iowa. But some of the bigger towns have Walmart, and those bigger Walmarts have everything. Ica, salon, hair salon, and things like that. So it's like each one of those is like a little small business that can be squeezed out of the small town. And we kind of see that on our small town square here, that a lot of those businesses don't exist anymore. Like the hardware store that's been here for decades is going out of business. So the owner's passing on, and it's not worth it for anybody else because they have to compete with a multinational retail company.
Yeah, this is a massive problem. I mean, in economics, where most of this was studied, community currencies, generally a pound or a euro or a dollar or whatever is spent in a supermarket circulates 1.2 times around the local economy, whereas if it's spent in a local shop or somewhere else through normally a community currency or an alternative currency, it circulates around over 3 times in the local economy. And money just creates value through the velocity, through the exchange of hands. I should find this video. It's very funny, actually, where they're trying to explain community currencies, and someone visits this town basically with $100 note, gives it to the guy from the hotel who has a debt with the bar, who has a debt with someone else, and this $100 goes around the whole community, and then the guy finally says, actually, I'm not going to stay the night. And the person from the hotel returns the $100 back to him, but everyone has repaid their debts within that time. So it's kind of just a funny way to show you that the circulation of that is what makes a difference. And so the more we circulate money within the community, and the more that everyone gets more abundant. And so that's the after effect of community currencies. And that's what we saw with Inkiri, actually, very much so, was that what I was trying to explain was that instead of buying the bread outside, people were creating it within the community. It was creating more jobs. It was creating more positions. It was creating more things locally produced, which was really beautiful. And so exactly on the contrary, what you're saying is that when we do spend in multinationals, when we do spend in supermarkets, we are taking that away from the community. We are depriving the smaller sellers. And so even though a lot of us are saying we don't want this, we're fighting climate change, we don't, it's about us individually to also, as consumers, vote with our dollar, vote with the money we're spending, to say, I am going to go to the farmer's market, I'm going to go to this shop instead of ordering on Amazon directly or going to the supermarket. So, these are all questions for us to consider. Definitely. Yeah,
what you just said there, and you used Amazon as an example, and I'm a big believer in this because there seems to be, let's just divide it into two approaches. One approach is Amazon is a massive company, and they provide a great service. And the feeling is, they don't, like for example, in the US, they don't really pay any taxes. Therefore, we'll all continue. What we want is we all want to continue to shop at Amazon, support the Amazon system, but we just want them to pay a massive amount of taxes, and then that money, I guess it's assumed that money gets redistributed in some social way through society. But it's like you said, but people are not saying let's change the habit of shopping with Amazon. They want to just tackle this big problem and it takes government to solve that. It's like it takes politics, and then people are fighting over politics and arguing about it on Facebook and Twitter whether Amazon should pay the taxes or not. And then, like what you said is, why don't we just start changing our habits and buy more local rather than shopping at Amazon? And the reason people don't do it is because it's uncomfortable to change these habits. I mean, a lot of these massive businesses have created incredibly convenient services. I mean that's
I think what you're saying is a word. It's convenience, right? We've just started living in such a fast-paced society, such a fast-paced way of living, that all we're looking for is convenience and what's faster and what's this. And that was a big thing at Schumacher, and Satish used to speak about. And it was really coming back to ourselves and saying, can we just take a moment to step back and see, okay, do I really need this? Do I really need it so fast? Is this really, or can we consciously decide things? Can we consciously do things again? And this is what I'm inviting people to do as well. And I try to do this in our life. I really try to support as many local producers as possible. I love to go to markets to get to know them. We get our vegetables from a CSA, a vegetable box, and things like this. And of course, sometimes I am going to a supermarket, but I do question myself a lot of times. I'm like, okay, I'm not saying you can fully take yourself away from the system, because we are living in the system, but can we be conscious about it, and can we make decisions in different ways? That for me is important. And like for me in Lisbon, for example, I go to a bio supermarket that's locally owned versus one that's owned by a chain. Just to, these little things I'm trying to do, of course, sometimes I go here and there, but I just feel like if we all became a little bit more conscious, we could solve the issue. It's like, and this is why I was doing this education project for young people as well. I feel like we've made this climate issue or the issues in the world so massive, and we've just completely disempowered ourselves.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what I was alluding to earlier, is that when they make the issue big, and the only way to solve it is by some big, massive political change and power. And like I said, then people spend the rest of their lives on social media arguing over it rather than actually making any change in their lives.
Yeah, and my point is and then you're always blaming the outside. We're blaming the corporations, we're blaming Amazon, but we're supporting it, right? So instead of blaming, I feel like it's part of taking self-responsibility and seeing what changes can I make. And if each of us made little changes in our lives, and this is what I was saying to young people, I don't know, we had the UN Sustainable Development Goals, this and this much we need to make, trillions to get there. If everyone did a little bit in the world, we would get there. We would get there. And I'm not saying all of us need to quit doing this or that, or, you know, everyone lives a different lifestyle. So do whatever fits you. There's no one cookie cutter model that's going to say everyone needs to do this. But if you eat meat, maybe reduce your meat consumption or don't eat meat anymore. If you travel a lot, maybe do one less trip. Of carbon emissions, if you do whatever it is that you can do in your life that you can cut back on. You know, I'm not saying like everyone needs to live the same way, but can we take responsibility of our actions and actually make those changes? For me, that's the important part of questioning ourselves.
Sure, and I think that, I mean, for me personally, what I suggest to people is take your own inventory and see where you can make the change, rather than, let's say one person decides, well, I'm not going to eat meat at all, I'm going to be a vegan, and that's the way and that's the highway, and then they want to judge and tell other people that they need to do that. For me, that's problematic. It's different for every person. Every person has a different framework of how they live, and some things are easier for some people to give up than others. So we have to be a little bit, from my perspective, I think we have to be a little bit careful of telling other people what to do and what to
completely. And this is
but ask everybody to look at yourself and say, well, just what can you do in your life?
Exactly. That's what I think. And you know, exactly what you're saying. That's what I was trying to allude to. It's like, we're not here to tell people what's right or wrong. You know, that's just another judgment. That's just another way of sending your energy onto someone, but inviting people to say, what changes can I make that suit my lifestyle? You know, what feels right to me? And if we could all question ourselves in that way, and I feel like it's a maturity, right? It's going away from the teacher or the whoever telling you what to do to you taking responsibility and just saying, okay, what can I do to make the change happen? And I just feel like a lot of times we're just in the child's position going, those corporations and these people and that, you know, okay, but we're in this whole crisis together. So, you know, let's come together and find solutions that can work for all of us, where we can take one step forward together instead of blaming each other and just, which is not serving anyone, I think, and just going into, not a healthy spiral with that. So,
yeah, I mean, I think there's some sort of theories of incremental. Yeah, I think there's some theories of kind of incremental change. So, like if you have a soccer team with 11 players, if each player improves 2%, the accumulation of that on the team is much greater than just the 2%. You know, the individual, you know, the whole is greater than the parts. And
exactly.
If everybody does something. I love this conversation. We would talk about, the world's not exactly how we'd like it to be right now. You know, so the pandemic, inflation, there's talk of governments implementing central bank digital currencies, and which will give them maybe more control, and we don't know what they'll do with that, and some people may not want to participate in that. And then obviously the inflation issue, we may be reaching a situation where people just can't afford the basics of life. And I'm sort of monitoring a little bit the situation in Europe with fuel costs. So like you said, people are going to be looking for different ways to meet their needs. Can you sort of just run through what we've touched on some of the things today, but maybe what are the sort of known ways or different ways of doing things? I mean, we're just here in my small community, in a small community within our community, we're kind of experimenting with a few things now, but I'd be interested to hear, from you, what are the main ways that people could shift to in terms of just not using money the same way we've been using it before, exchange, barter, gifting, local currency, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we had this conversation, right, that I thought was quite funny when you said about, even the gifting or the bartering that was happening when you were growing up.
Yeah.
That was beyond money, with your father and the vet, or, whatever the situation was. And I just think that's inherent in a trusting system. And beyond looking at, and I guess in Fairfield or where you are, you have much more trust in the system. You know your neighbors, you know your community. That is the first step. And you guys are in like a great place to be if something does, I don't want to use that word, but shit hits the fan or something. You know your neighbors, you can all support each other. But in the cities we're living in now, or in just so disconnected, we don't have that. So if something really happens, who do people call upon? How do you support each other? And for me, the first step is creating community, building relationships, really knowing your neighbors, really knowing the people around you, and having that as the base. Because we used to live in communities, we used to support each other. We used to come from barter systems, right? Where someone had chickens and the other one had, I don't know, shoes and eggs or whatever it was, and we used to barter. The reason was that our society got so big, that we all started living together, that it was very difficult to do this through the growth. I mean, there's many different stories, mind you, on how money came about and how the system came about. But this is one narrative. But I'm just saying, underlying everything, and like I was saying before, money is trust. And so can we build that trust again to then completely work with different systems? There's time banking systems that have happened. There's exchange systems that have taken place. And inherently beyond that, on the spiritual dimension, the more you give, the more life gives back to you in different ways. And I just believe we have become so one track, so I give and so I should get from you. Mm-hmm. And it's just become such a transactional society that we don't see beyond that. And what was just inspiring for me was to live at Schumacher College, to really learn from nature and to realize that nature doesn't function like this, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like, oh, the sun shines on me and so, and that's how it works. And I'm not going to give an apple unless someone's going to be there to take it and give me the pear back or whatever. The apple tree is just giving apples. The flower is just giving a fragrance. The sun is just shining. Could we not just be our essence, give, and inherently trust that things would come back? And that's what brings me back to alignment. Because if we're in full alignment, if you're fully aligned with your gift, if everyone's in full alignment, we are just giving what we need to give, what the world needs. I like to say to the women I work with or the people I work with, I'm coaching, it's like it's almost selfish to hold back your gifts. You are here to give them. This is your dharma. This is what you're here to give, and the world needs it because there's only one of you and only one of you who can give what you're giving. And we need that to keep growing. But that comes through trust, that comes through understanding, that comes through holding each other in this place. And I just feel like in Fairfield, wherever you are, Isaiah, you're way ahead than many places in society at the moment where this doesn't even exist, And I just fundamentally think beyond thinking of another system, another thing, can we look at what is functioning, nature? Can we learn from nature? Can we learn from giving? Can we learn from mycelium that redistributes under the earth? There are systems that redistribute water and nutrients between plants. This isn't existing in our society at the moment. The wealth gap is getting bigger with the crises we're living through, with COVID, with whatever is happening. Can we find other ways?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I feel right now that the greatest wealth is the sort of love bonds that you have with your friends and your community. I mean, if things get sticky, that's what's really gonna come through. And yeah, I am fortunate. I mean, in the last week, I was gifted a watermelon, a dozen eggs, a huge bag of apples that are there. Look in the little bowl, and some veggies. And I'm part of a smaller community within our larger community of about 50 people, and we're starting to experiment with some gifting and things like that. And I realized, well, when I cook, it's actually to make for 4 people versus 1. There's no time difference, and even the investment, there's not that much. It's not that much difference. So I'm just starting to I make a meal. I'm going to make for 4 people every time now instead of 1. And then we have like an online group where we can communicate and just say, okay, we've got 3 extra meals today. Who wants one? And just start I'm just starting doing stuff like that.
That's beautiful. And there's been studies done that say that through gifting, like your meal or the cooking that you're doing, we become much happier. It's beyond just the material thing of what we get back, but through giving, we are happier. And I guess you would know this, but through all the studies you've done and everything, but it's true. You'll see that your hormones are changing, you're happier, you see other people happier, and I feel this is what we're missing, this thing of giving. Yeah. Just from our hearts, this fountain of love, of unconditional love, or of that care that we have for each other.
Yeah, I mean, and
just reawakening that.
I mean, the frequency and vibe is different. Like, for example, you mentioned you have a CSA. If anybody doesn't know what that means, that's where you pay a certain amount for the season, right? And you get a farmer, you get a basket of produce from the farmer,
vegetables,
every week. But I'm sure for you, like that whole experience of going to pick it up, interacting with the person, it's a higher vibe frequency. Let's put it in basic. There's more love there, isn't there, than if you go to the big chain supermarket. I mean, your whole experience. I mean, I've noticed the last couple of months I've hardly bought any produce from the supermarket. I purchased from the farmer's market, and then I do have, I'm fortunate I've got 2 or 3 friends that are good gardeners, and they have excess and they give to me as well. But I've just noticed that's my favorite part of the week, is going to the farmer's market. It's just the vibes through the roof there. And I think I mentioned
the connections, right? The relationships. That's what nourishes us as humans.
Now, here's a funny thing.
Material.
I feel better when I give them cash than when I give them a card. I mean, most of them have the option of both. And I'm not, and it's not an intellectual thing. I'm just noticing the vibe, the frequency I feel when I give them cash. I don't know. It just feels better. There's something, and I don't know what that is. Maybe because there's not a bank involved. I mean, a bank card, there's some cut being taken and so forth. I don't know, but maybe that's more fluid. But so all our lives, can improve. But it's like you were saying earlier. It's like these crises actually have the benefit of a solution within them. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but I remember my father grew up during the Second World War in the UK, and none of us ever want war. But one thing all the older people used to say is that we loved how people worked together and the community, and how people helped each other. And God help us, we don't want like a war to make that happen. But I think the crisis we're going through, hopefully we'll see some shifts and more return to community.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really hope for that too. And that support for each other, and breaking down these silos that we've built up. And and it's just a reminder to us, like you're saying, right? The moment that you love the most is at the farmer's market. Knowing where produce come from, giving thanks, honoring that process, and it just feels super important.
Yeah, and the families come there, the kids are playing, and I see friends there. But it is that I really feel good every time I give $1 to one of those farmers.
Yeah, and I think, like you're saying, it's also seeing how we feel. Like you're saying, when you give cash versus the card, what difference does that make? And can we just feel into this ourselves and just find, the next true way through that? And that's what I was saying again. I think creativity and these moments bring creativity, birth creativity. And can we just look at nature? Can we look at systems that work and just learn from them? Really surrendering, saying, okay, we don't know what's best. We have created this. How can we move forward? But with humility and the willingness to change, and the willingness. And I just have a feeling like we're going to be having to rely on each other more, move more into community to go through this time. And so what we're saying is just showing us that, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now with your workshops and work with empowering women?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I really focused on women after the birth of my son. I was, my story about finance, and I was super driven. But even my partner would tell you, like, just after he was born, he was like, something switched in you. And I really started realizing the importance of the feminine values, not just male, female, but really the feminine energy that is missing in the world. And I learned that through my son, like patience, receptivity, time, nurturing. That really awoke through the birth of him. And I realized I really wanted to work with more women to allow them to really find their gifts, find their place, and share this with the world. And because we know the systems don't work anymore. We know we're going through a big change. It's not men and women, male, female. More women are in the workforce, more women are out there. But there are things beyond us that are holding us back, I realized. And this is ancestral patterns, cycles that we're in. And so I really wanted to work with women to find their gifts. And I also realized after having my son, we live in societies where men and women are working now. Maybe in the past it was different. But so we're one of the first generations of women who are all in the economic system who are earning our money. Maybe before that there were agreements that men were working, women were at home, but it doesn't exist anymore. But it is so painful for a woman. I felt that after my son, to go to work, to do something you really don't love to do, to not be with your children, with your child. And so I started thinking, like, how can this even exist? There's a pain in society. Kids are growing up without moms being happy, you know. Women are doing so much more. I know in Denmark there's a whole narrative going on now that women are, you know, working plus raising children plus taking care of the home plus all of these things. Women are burning out with so many tasks. But what became more important for me is to realize, can you do something you love to do and receive for that? And really empowering women and helping them to do this. And I guess my story follows my journey. As you always say, that the healing comes through where you're at. And so that's what was born. And since last year, I've run 5 groups of women's group coaching. That's really been the fruition of all the workshops I've done, all the talks I've done, the one-to-one coaching. And I've been holding women's circles in Lisbon for over 3 years now, every month, for women to gather, to share in community. And I realized that the women's group coaching was that. It was the coaching in a circle with other women. And the most important thing for me, exactly going back to community, was that the grass was not greener on the other side. I had women in the circles who grew up in Soviet Russia, from a favela in Brazil, a Mayan community in Mexico, from the US, to women who've never had to work because of their family backgrounds, from Asia. Imagine bringing all these stories into one room and hearing each other's stories. And the women who never had money saying, I never thought I would have the same place as another woman who does have money, thinking that money would solve all their problems. Whereas when you hear the story of the people who did have money, where it was horrible, not wanting to have money, you know, all of this just breaks down, and it brings us back to a clean slate of where we can build from and build our lives from. And this has just been so nourishing, and it's been such an amazing process for me, and I've just loved it. And so I'm doing the 6th cycle coming up now in a couple of weeks. And then it's also been coming to me in the last few weeks that it'll be the last cycle for a while, maybe until at some point next year, because new things are being born. And through this process of working with women, I've realized that, and this has been a huge kind of next thing, that time, as we see it, we work with a Gregorian calendar that was from Pope Gregory in the 16th century, coming from a Caesarean calendar. Time is not linear. Time is not rigid. And the societies we're building on that are just moving towards burnout with this rigidity and gold orientation does not work. And so the work has also been going back to women understanding their cycles, their menstrual cycles, their periods, and how we can work with the power of your period to build businesses that are regenerative, looking back at nature versus just depleting us. And so that's the cycle I'm moving into as well, regeneration, not just in nature, but in our personal selves as well. And so it's really taking a whole nother life of its own. But it's been just, I don't know, a journey, I would say, for myself, a journey within myself, and a journey that I've been able to share with others, and especially women, as a part of my life that I've been in right now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I know I worked for many years within a spiritual organization, non-profit, and they always gave the women the rest days for the cycle, and just seems normal, and it's how it should be.
It's beautiful. Yeah, and I've been doing it now too, and I just cancel things and really take a rest. And when we rest in those moments, we also have so much more energy in the other moments. And I feel it's the same in society. I feel it's the same in nature. We go through winter, we go through regeneration, but in our society we expect it to be on 24 hours a day at the same rate every day, and it's just not going to work anymore, and we're seeing it now. And so I feel like it's bringing us back to these natural rhythms, these cycles that we can live from and connect to.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I had to build a life that was built around my own energy cycles, and I have times I stay up late and want to sleep late. I have times that I get up early, and I just go with the energy. I don't know when the energy is going to be high and when the creativity is high. I mean, there's obviously times when I have to knuckle down and just do what needs to get done, responsibilities and so forth. But I built my work, my lifestyle, my business around being able to manage my own kind of energy rhythms, and I love it. It's not. I wouldn't give it up for any. I wouldn't give it up for for anything.
Yeah, I think that's probably the healthiest way to live, right? Back to nature, back to your energy cycles, back to the way we can, the natural way, and not pushing ourselves to burnout. I remember when I was working in finance, taking tablets because it was my period, expecting to work the same way. We're taking all this kind of it's just not natural. It's just not normal. And it's really, we're fortunate enough to even question this, to be in positions in life to be able to do this and to implement it. And so I also do say to people I work with, it's not like you're going to change your whole life now and work according to a cycle, right? But if you can bring like 15, 20, 25% of this into your life and start living by this, you will see the change already happening.
That's wonderful. How can people find out more about your work? I mean, we'll put links and things in the description, but you maybe tell us what your website is.
Yeah, it's marmichellehausler.com. So Mar Michelle LLE Hausler. I guess you'll put it down. And then I also have a lot on Instagram and much more live there. And slowly I'm building things up again. So it was, I would say, 2.5 years. Last time I was in Fairfield was almost 3 years ago. And then my son was born. And that's been a cycle in itself. And now that he started timely school this week, or forest school, like a couple of hours in the morning, it's been like freeing up my energy again. So I'm really just, feeling that I want to come back out. I really want to come back to share again. I have like new things really wanting to be birthed. And so, so if anyone's interested, please reach out. I'd be happy to have a chat, to see where you're at. I'm not only working with women, I do work with men one-to-one as well. And beyond this, I'm starting a cyclical group that will have coaching twice a week that you can really drop into and really kind of keep on track and in your cyclical way to really, blossom and shine and bring the gifts to the world. And that's what the world needs right now, everyone to step up in their truest and highest self and to share that so we can really move beyond where we're at right now and keep supporting each other. So yeah, thank you so much for having me, Guy, and so much for, holding the space that you're doing and sharing with the community. I mean, I think we need more of these spaces to really inspire and to support each other in these moments that we're going through right now.
Well, thank you, Mar. It was an absolutely fascinating and engaging conversation, and I think many people watch or listen to this will be inspired by it, and maybe we can have another conversation in the future. I really loved this, the chat we had today.
Of course. Yeah, of course. I'm so open to it. And so much to explore, so many more topics to go to. There's so much more I could share about and speak about. I feel like we have so many threads.
Another box. It's great. Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Mar. Thank you.
Thank you.